All right, so Google says we are live. Welcome everybody to Chalice and Chains. Today, I am very excited to be kind of hosting a Edge of the Empire character creation session. This was sort of spawned by the call to adventure movement that Drake Warren, and I think Jake Norman might have been involved in that as well, but they sort of spawned this movement to kind of help get either players that haven't ever played with, in this case, me before, to play, have never played an RPG before, have never played the system before, or have all played with you before, but, you know, whatever. So anyway, I'm very excited because I ended up putting out a kind of an interest post for Edge of the Empire, and 3 of the 4 players had never played it before. So this is exciting because this is one of my favorite systems of all time. Edge of the Empire. As you can see, this is an enormous core book, but well worth it. Yes, it has funny dice, but I promise, hopefully this and then the game that we run next week, same time, will help both the players here as well as anybody who might watch understand how this system works. So the goal of this session today is not necessarily going to be going through the entire character creation process, but more so coming up with some concepts for characters, a party of characters, as you know, so they say, and figuring out what those motivations are and what the character's obligation is. And obligation is a very specific mechanic within Edge of the Empire that has mechanical effects, but is primarily a complication within the character's lives that is constantly hanging over their head. So I have been very fortunate to have, right now, 3 of my 4 players, and possibly my 4th will be joining us later. Although it looks like Josh just dropped out again because unfortunately he's on strange Wi-Fi. But I'm going to let my players introduce themselves. Maybe even talk about if they have a concept of who they're playing. They could do that. If not, then don't even worry about it. But I think I am going to start with Chris. So Chris, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, you can plug your channel, anything you're working on, and
thanks.
Have at it.
Well, I am Chris Johnson, and I am one half of the Dargon Gaming Squad channel, and I am the enthusiast of trying out new systems. Like I've been really driven to do that lately. So I've been telling these guys, I've been listening to the Campaign podcast, which is playing Edge of the Empire, and I've been finding it super entertaining. So I am very excited to jump in and give this a try. And I opted to go with a pre-gen character, so I'm going to be playing Sasha the Explorer, and I guess we'll see like what we're going to do with her to tweak her to have her fit in with our concept tonight. So cool. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I'm glad that the opportunity worked out. And just so everybody knows, Sasha the Explorer is one of the extra pre-gens that Fantasy Flight Games created for the Edge of the Empire beginner game. And that particular pre-gen you can actually download for free on their website. So check that out. I will probably end up updating the description of the video with the link to that for anybody who's interested. Also, get the beginner game. It is phenomenal. And it's very helpful to learn the system because you kind of learn as you go. But I'm going to kick it over to my next player, who's no stranger to me, but who has never played this system before. So, Jeff, if you want to take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff. I have a YouTube channel called Encounter Balance. If you want to check that out, feel free. As Sam said, I've had the fortune of having him as a player in my games or played alongside him and played in his games, and he's always great. So glad to be back here. But as he said, first time ever playing any of the Fantasy Flight games, Star Wars. It's been on my list for a while, so I'm pretty excited to finally get a chance to give it a shot. As far as potential concepts go, not really locked into anything. I'm leaning towards bounty hunter as the, I guess, class, if that's what it's called in this system. As my choice, we'll see where I end up, but that's kind of where I'm leaning towards. And maybe even gonna try being a droid, but we'll see about that one.
Excellent. Yeah. So a droid bounty hunter is pretty fun indeed. In Edge of the Empire, you have careers, and then each career has a specialization, and we'll get into that a little bit probably in this hangout. But for now, it looks like we do still have Josh with us, so that's great. So Josh, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, feel free if you want to plug your channel, because I know you're new to the community, and that's awesome, and we're happy that there's a new channel coming up here. And yeah, go ahead and, if you want, describe kind of the character concept that you were thinking of.
Hey everybody, I'm Josh. I am half of a YouTube channel called RPG Enlightenment. It's a new channel. We're still working out a lot of the kinks and stuff, but for sure a whole bunch of content coming soon with my co-founder Jimmy. Shout out to Jimmy. I have a couple basic ideas as to who I want to play. Nothing really set in stone. I know I had originally thought of like a Twi'lek, like a person who is very tech savvy, but he's very muscular. So I was thinking maybe like bounty hunter as well. I know Jeff had said it, but like using both his bronze and his brains kind of in order to accomplish that. But I mean, who knows? I haven't really had too much time to kind of look through my book to figure out all the different little quirks. So hopefully this will help.
Yeah, definitely. I think the concept that we had considered possibly was the bounty hunter gadgeteer specialization.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and so the fourth player that will be in the game is Dennis Kellogg, who anybody in the Absolute Tabletop community, RPG Brigade, Tabletop RPG one-shot group will most likely know of Dennis. He's great. I've played with him before, run games for him, and he's a veteran player of this system for sure. So I'm sure he will add a welcome element. He may be able to, hopefully he'll be able to jump in a little bit later to the hangout and do that. But the first thing that I wanted to do is talk about how the character creation process works in Edge of the Empire. And then we're going to probably skip through a few of the steps, but we'll take a look at a few things as well. And just for anybody who might be following along at home, on page 34 of the Edge of the Empire core rulebook, it lists the character generation steps. And there's 10 steps. Now, that sounds maybe like a lot for generating your character, but it's really not. Considering the last step is choosing your starting ship, which is a thing in Edge of the Empire. Typically, you guys have a ship, and which is cool because in a lot of games you don't start with a ship, but this one you do. But the very first thing that you do in character creation is not pick your species, not pick your class, not pick your specialization, but to come up with a sort of a concept and a background for your character. And then the second thing you do is come up with your character's obligation. So effectively, what has motivated your character and who are they? And why are they in the situation that they're in as basically outlaws, criminals, or maybe just explorers, but people who are basically in the outer rim, right on the edge of the Imperial space, trying to survive, to make a living, and to accomplish whatever goals they might have. So that's where we're going to start. Now, in the book, they do have some examples of character backgrounds, somebody, the down and out, the middle class struggles, the high and the mighty, the outsider, stuff like that, opportunity knocks, a higher calling, all kinds of stuff. You can reference them on pages like 36 through 38. But they're nice to have in there. They're by no means required to pick those. So, Josh, maybe we'll start with you, since you kind of have a concept in mind. You were saying that you might want to play a sort of brawn-focused bounty hunter that uses tech. So, go ahead maybe and give me a little bit about like what you would sort of picture your character's, origins being, and maybe why. If you want to go with bounty hunter, that's great. And by no means is it a problem to have 2 bounty hunters. In fact, that can work out really well. But if you want to do that, maybe why did he become a bounty hunter as well?
So kind of what I've kind of been thinking, especially watching some of your games that you've run in this and looking up some other stuff about it. I've kind of been thinking that he didn't necessarily start off as a bounty hunter. I think he was like a very techie person, probably working on ships and stuff like that, until, I don't know, maybe a death in his family or something like that. And he started using his tech to try to catch whoever it was that killed some part of my family. And then because of that, he ended up meeting a Hutt, which I haven't figured out what I want the Hutt's name to be, who just so happened to run like bounty hunting business and give out gigs and stuff like that. And ended up liking the way that I caught whoever it was that killed my family, and ended up offering me a job. And then because of that and being in that type of environment, my character kind of got really caught up in Pazak, and now it's kind of been where him and the Hutt have this general agreement where whenever he goes into like severe debt, the Hutt will give him like the impossible mission, and that if he comes back from that impossible mission, his debt's cleared. So that's kind of the little bit that I've kind of thought of for my character.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I really like that. That is the sort of quintessential like Edge of the Empire type character, right? You got into a bad situation with a Hutt, maybe have a gambling addiction. So that's really cool. Were you thinking, I know you had mentioned previously that maybe you were drawn to the Twi'lek as a species, or Twi'lek or Twi'lek, or however you want to say it.
Yeah, I was thinking either Twi'lek or the Kodor, the really muscular, the brawn-based one. I always can never pronounce his name. Their species.
Yeah, the Trandoshan? Or
Trandoshan.
Yeah.
It was between the two.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So, I mean, I would definitely recommend that if you want a brawn-based character, the Trandoshan or Trandoshan is going to be the way to go. Just because I believe, and I'll let me find their stats in here. So they're on page 50 of the core rulebook. Their actual stats are on page 51, but they have a starting brawn of 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where,
I did see.
Yeah, where a Twi'lek, they're more like charm based. So Twi'leks only have a brawn of 1, but they have a presence of 3, which means that they are generally good looking. That's your sort of charisma stat. If you were to look at it, in D&D. So Trandoshan might be the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, but at the same time, if I'm trying to do where it wasn't like what he had originally planned, on like getting into like, I don't know. Because what I'm thinking is like he had no real mean to become a bounty hunter. It just kind of so happened that because of life, you know, that ended up becoming like his life choice because of the death in his family. So I mean, kind of what I was thinking. I mean, I guess I'll wait for everybody else to kind of make that final call. But I was thinking like Twi'lek because of the fact that they're just very like well-rounded, except for Braun. And then because of his like history and, you know, all of the stuff that has happened to him, he like gained that brawn, because I believe that we get to spend XP to increase abilities. So that's why I was kind of thinking that. But I mean, as we talk about this a little bit more, maybe I'll come up with a different idea. But
yeah, for sure. No, that's cool. And certainly this is a system that you can min-max if you want to, but it's also a system that even if you do that, it's still going to be a lot of fun. So don't feel necessarily like you have to go against type if you don't want to, because it will cost a lot of your starting XP to get. If you want a brawn focused Twi'lek, that is going to cost a lot of XP. Not that that's a bad thing, but just keep that in mind. However, they do start with like ranks, a free rank in either charm or deception. So that's something to consider as well. But why don't we put a pin in that for right now, and we'll come back to you in just a minute. Jeff, why don't we talk about maybe what you're thinking after having heard Josh's, and even if it's still sort of nebulous, that's okay. We can kind of go over to Chris and she can explain Sasha a little bit and maybe what she's thinking, and come back to you if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I have the list of albums pulled up, and I'm taking a look and seeing my attention. The one that's actually kind of to me is Criminal. Like, I'm basically thinking about just like going full on Edge of the Empire. I mean, just having just the worst of the worst, just like treacherous scum and full on villainy. I'm just kind of like seeing where that might take me. I'm kind of working out the details, just because that's not enough to have a character. But I kind of want to like rive into the dark side, I kind of feel, and see if I can kind of try to embody that, because it's totally not the type of character that I usually play. To give it a try. You're muted.
Sorry, my bad. I really like that a lot. I think that, and so just as something to keep in mind, in Edge of the Empire, you don't have to play criminals and bad guys, but man, it can be fun to do so. So yeah, I love that. I love especially the fact that could be a source of sort of friction for the party as well.
I was gonna say maybe the whole like Josh's character was never quite sure if he wanted to do this, and it's like more tied into the group, like at least between us, more by accident and by force, rather than like, oh yes, we agree eye to eye and would be a great team. It's more like, we both have this job, we got to do it, or else there's going to be consequences, so we have to freaking sort it out. And I'm going to do anything I have to my way.
Nice. Yeah, I think that works. I think that's good. So in terms of, you know, being sort of like a criminal, I mean, what would you imagine would be like the crimes that you were committing? I mean, like, would you be, sort of like a hacker, like hacking into information? Would you be more like a gun for hire, kind of like, yeah, you need somebody dead, I'll go kill them, jacking ships,
Yeah. I think assassination and information collection, more often the result of interrogation.
Yeah.
Or
So an HK unit.
Yeah. So you're all around just
basically like
bad
I
thug.
just like the worst.
Yeah.
Just like picture a bad dude and like that's him.
Nice. Okay. So do you think that it's likely then that you might have been in the employ of, I don't know, the Hutts? I mean, maybe even the same Hutt that Josh's character was working for? Or did you have a different thing in mind?
Thinking droid, so I think I'd probably like just be like actually in a like built to be the worst from the start. And
Okay.
maybe a Hutt responsible for that. I kind of work for him because of that.
Right.
I'm totally open to that idea if that's the way that we want to go with it.
Yeah, we can consider that anyway. Possible Hutt connection, because of course in the Outer Rim, the Hutts definitely, they are the big criminal syndicate out there. I mean, there are others certainly, but the Hutts control a lot, and they're influential in the Outer Rim.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and one idea actually that kind of sprung into my mind is I was reading through the bounty hunter section.
Yep.
And one of it says like bounty hunter stories, so like why you became a bounty hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of this one of revenge, and I'm kind of feeling it. Like maybe one of the Hutts had me like built and basically just used me as a tool of just like, you're my robot slave, go do my bidding.
Yeah.
And then because I'm just a piece of metal, I'm not actually a person. He like hung me out to dry on a mission. He betrayed me or cast me away or something like that. And now I've joined a different Hutt to him, trying to like work against him to like work to a moment that I can finally get my like revenge against the first Hutt.
Yes.
Something like that.
I love it. You guys are gonna get killed right away. That's gonna be great. No, just kidding.
Immediately.
Yeah, immediately. The game will be 3 seconds. The Hutt sends in a bunch of thugs. You're dead. Okay. Cool. All right. No, I like that. I also like the idea that. So I guess then the question though would be, if you want to be more of like an assassin type, then I think bounty hunter definitely makes sense. But if you're thinking more of like that sort of hired gun, hired muscle, just kind of like overall killer, you may want to consider hired gun as the career, because within the hired gun, they don't have the assassin, because obviously the assassin is much more skill focused and stealth focused and whatever, but the hired gun is really the soldier class of the of the Edge of the Empire, and I think they
I definitely did have a little bit more of like the assassin-y type of concept, at least in my mind, of that like slimy, manipulative, just like get behind when you least expect it kind of thing.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, then I think that would make sense, definitely. I mean, the assassin has the ability to, that skullduggery and that stealth, and obviously, is good with weapons as well and can kill people. So, all right. Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? I think that there's a cool connection there possibly between Josh's character and your character, especially both being bounty hunters, with a possible Hutt connection. So let's Yeah. So let's go to Chris at this point. And Chris, just thinking about Sasha, you can certainly feel free. I don't know if the PDF of the character has the background written in or not. You can feel free to use that, but if you want to change it up, certainly, go ahead and do that. But what are your thoughts for the character?
Well, so the background that came with her is actually pretty cool, and it might tie into what these two are thinking. So she essentially, ended up with her family getting wiped out due to her own mistakes. And she has ended up being a scout. And through working with a bounty hunter, she got off of her home planet and ended up on another planet. And I guess which planet doesn't really matter. But she's continued to scout there. And so, I don't know how much relationship building is important as far as us and coming together as a team, but I assume it's just as important as any other party. So it kind of fits because she could potentially have done some scouting for one of these guys, and maybe that's how we all came together. So it kind of seems like it fits well. So and it's, after reading it, I felt like it was something I could pull off, like somebody I'd be comfortable playing. So, which I discovered this yesterday. So for some reason, when I first looked at this, I only saw the first couple pages, but after I printed it out, I noticed it had this. So yeah, because I was kind of sweating it, what? How do I know who she's supposed to be? But yeah, it's actually a pretty cool, so she's kind of a, what I'm getting from her is that she's this explorer girl. She's kind of a survival kind of a person, and it looks like she's pretty savvy with coercion and computers and piloting and medicine. So she's kind of a all-around handy girl.
Yeah. No, that's good.
And after hearing you say that, based on my backstory, maybe she was actually the one who helped me find the people that killed my family, seeing as she has that scouting background. Just a little thought that I had.
Right.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, definitely. And Chris, why do you think that she would? I mean, do you think that she would be out sort of scouting and exploring because she feels a little bit more comfortable in nature away from people because of what happened to her family? Or do you think that maybe there's a different reason for why she has sort of chosen the profession that she has?
So I think the way they've kind of put it forth is that she was the only one to survive, so she kind of had to survive. And then when she moved, it was just like a natural thing for her to do what she already knew. And that seems like a pretty reasonable, it's a pretty reasonable thing. And it's a completely different environment, but she just kind of adapted and dealt with it. So I kind of like that idea, this resilient person who just kind of rolls with it. And this is what I'm good at, so I'm just going to keep doing it kind of thing.
Definitely. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. And so, Sasha is a human, I believe, explorer scout. Is that right? Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Explorer scout. Okay, cool. So explorer is the career and scout is the specialization, which can be found in the Edge of the Empire core book on, I think, page 69. And where's the scout? 72 is the talent tree for the scout. But yeah, so that's great. So, and of course, like you said, she's got some skills with piloting and medicine and can talk her way out of certain situations as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's really good. Just kind of maybe in your own, sort of thinking about this character, how do you think she would feel about working with, let's say, a real nasty piece of work criminal?
I think they make her uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think they are. I think she uses a lot of her street smarts to fly under the radar and stay out of their way as much as possible. Although, if she has somebody who needs her to scout and they happen to be somebody on the wrong side of one of those people, she's not going to examine that. She's just going to do what she needs to do to get along in the world.
Mhm.
So I think I think she'd be one of those people who's trying to like stay out of trouble and not be too noticed so that she can go about her business.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say at this point, like, motivates her? Like, why, because she could do anything. I mean, if she doesn't have any ties to her family and she's got some of these skills, like, what, and this is where, the obligation would really make sense. Yeah. So I don't know if you have the list of the obligations or not in front of you. If not, I can reference them for you. But in the core book, essentially they have, and I'll go through them again, and I'll probably put them in the chat at some point, but they have addiction, and that can be whether that is drugs, whether that is gambling, whether that is, like thrill seeking, you have an addiction to, cliff jumping or whatever it is, the high flying adrenaline, riding speeder bikes really fast, that kind of thing. There's that. There's betrayal, and betrayal can be either way. Either you've been betrayed and that's caused a problem for whatever reason, or you have betrayed somebody, and obviously that's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Blackmail, which again can be either way. Maybe there's a bounty. You have a bounty on your head. Criminal, like what Jeff was saying. Debt is one, which I think is the one that makes the most sense for Josh. But we can talk about that. Duty bound, which may or may not fit depending on what you're. That one says, the PC has a deep sense of duty that he or she feels compelled to fulfill, such as military service, making good on a contract, following some sort of thieves code. Unlike oath, which is further down, a duty-bound character has some legal or ritualistic bind to an organization or cause, making it extremely difficult or detrimental if he or she fails to live up to that. So that may or may not make sense. If you don't have a sort of concept in mind, that one may or may not work. But family is an obligation, but it sounds like your character doesn't have any family. Right. Unless there is some family out there in the galaxy that wasn't on your home colony or whatever. That could be a possibility.
Right.
Long lost sister or brother or whatever that you're trying to get to. That could be something. Favor is one. So you owe a big favor to somebody. Probably not a nice somebody. There's oath, which, you've sworn some sort of oath that obviously you have to fulfill. Obsession, which of course is just as it sounds, unhealthy obsession towards something, or responsibility.
Mm.
So I'll put them in the chat. If nothing is sort of standing out to you right now, that's okay. But those are and you don't have to go with those either. If you think of something and you're like, man, I know this is what would motivate her, and it doesn't necessarily fit, we can make it custom.
Okay. I'm thinking maybe like maybe she feels a sense of duty to the person, the bounty hunter that got her off of her home planet.
Okay.
Like, she feels like she owes that person anytime they want something from her, because it's one of those lifelong debt kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's cool. That makes sense. Now, do you think that bounty hunter is one of these two characters?
I think that would make a really interesting twist.
Yeah.
It would certainly, give us motivation to be together, or maybe it's duty to one of them for some other reason. Like if we want to get away from the pre-gen backstory, then, you know, we could move more that direction too. Like maybe I have an obligation to them. Maybe one of them saved my life when I was scouting for him or something. But I kind of like the Judy idea.
There's always the Han Chewie relationship too.
Right?
Yeah.
What was their, I don't even know, like why they were.
Yeah. Han Solo basically saved Chewbacca's life. And within that culture, you basically owe a life debt if something like that happens. So
Yeah. So
it is their like strongest promise is like it's a life debt. Yeah. It's like their strongest like thing that they can never break. And if they break it, it's just like dishonor like on their entire family. It's a very interesting thing.
My life is yours.
yeah. Well, I mean, like, wouldn't you love to hear the internal monologue of Chewbacca? Like, man, what is this dude doing? Like, come on, we got to get into this again, and we got to run.
Us into trouble again.
Yeah, you know.
Well, I owe him.
Yeah, like when Han got frozen in carbonite and Chewie like made that sound, that, you know, you were thinking he was crying, but he was like, finally, like, Fool got what he deserved.
I actually keep thinking of this is so not nerdy, but White Christmas, and ever since I saved you, you know, the guy with his arm. I don't know if that's a reference you guys are familiar with, but
no, that's cool. Nice. All right. Well, so that's good. I mean, I think that, like, at least in terms of sort of figuring out what motivates these characters and sort of what is hanging over their heads, I think that this is a good start. I mean, I think, you know, Josh, with your character, you know, kind of that debt that you owe to the hut, you know, and maybe this, like, I don't know, would you say like you have a gambling addiction, or is it just something that you just happen to really enjoy and will just, you know, you happen to go high stakes whenever you can, kind of thing?
Yeah, more as an addiction. I just thought of it as like a hobby that I kind of got into from being kind of in the canteen with the hut to pass the time waiting for different gigs.
Okay.
And then, you know, picked up a Pazak deck and then started playing. Was really good at it. You know, using my charm and everything to kind of know whether or not the opposite person, you know, what the opposite person has, and making high stakes based on, you know, my observations of these people. And then obviously, you know, if there's someone that has a good bluff face, you know, obviously losing and having to go to this hut to pay off, you know, my gambling addictions, which at first he almost had me killed for. But then that's when we came to the agreement that he would just send me on the impossible bounty. And then if I came back, that my debt would be forgiven, kind of thing.
Right. And so, okay. So that makes sense.
If that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Cool. So as it stands, you owe this hut a lot of money. And he's basically said, if you do this for me, then your debt will be forgiven. But it's like one of those where perhaps it's one of those, like, you know, you're not getting out of this debt because you would have to be incredibly, incredibly lucky to actually pull this off, kind of thing. And maybe he knows that, and maybe he's like hoping that you'll get into more debt or into more trouble that will, you know, just tie you into him even more.
Yeah, which is probably why as soon as I figured that out, I called out on my scouting buddy to kind of help me out in doing whatever our mission ends up being.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. And so,
if that sounds good with you, Chris, I don't want to tie you to anything.
I think that sounds great. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, and so Jeff, maybe so you were kind of possibly almost, for lack of a better word, a slave to a hut, and basically made to do these things, and then now you're all about like trying to bring down that hut. I wonder if maybe, like, do you think that the hut that you're trying to bring down is the same one that Josh has that debt to, or do you think that perhaps that's the hut that you might be working for now?
I was trying to think of the exact same thing because I could see both of them being really cool. If it's like, if he's the same one, then it's like obviously we kind of have a very obvious reason to be allied because I work for him, he works for him,
Mhm.
all fine and dandy. But at the same time, I kind of do like the little twist of like, maybe the reason that we're allied is because he wants to get out of this debt and I want that hut dead anyways. So, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Kind
Yeah.
of thing. And that would give me a reason as, kind of a scumbag character to actually, stay with the group. If we kind of have a common enemy that we're trying to work against, there's a reason for us to be together. Because we both want that that tie of the past to be removed in one way or the other.
Yeah.
This story is definitely taking some interesting turns. I will say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely have some ideas as well. Okay, well, I think that that's good. I think that that's a good starting place for you guys in terms of like sort of who your characters are. That also kind of fulfills those first two steps of the character creation. So I definitely think that if you want, we can start looking briefly at, the species, the career, the specializations, kind of just going into that a little bit, even just taking a look at it. So you get an idea of kind of what you're looking at. Because I think that makes a lot of sense to start there. Let me take a look though at one thing really quick here. Yeah, okay. So in the book, the species basically start on page 43. And so, Josh, we'll start with you. I'll go to the Twi'lek. That's how I pronounce it. You guys can pronounce it however you want. But for some reason, Twi'lek is what sticks in my head.
Isn't that how they refer to them in the movie anyway, Twi'lek?
I don't know. I don't know if they ever actually refer to them in the movies. Maybe they do. I think it was
I
one of those.
usually hear it as Twi'lek, but either
Yeah,
way.
I do too. For a long time, that's how I pronounced it. And for whatever reason lately, I don't know if it's just I heard somebody say it, but Twi'lek is the way I have it stuck in my head now. So, but we can use it interchangeably. But yeah, so I mean, for Twi'leks, they beyond humans, they're probably like the most prominent non-human species in the galaxies. They're everywhere, right? I mean, they're very, very common. You find them on every planet, whatever. And obviously they have those like prehensile tentacles called leku, which you can actually use to communicate. They tend to be a little bit less tough and hardy. But very cunning and stuff like that. So and they're very like, at least on their home society, they have a very clannish type structure, right? So that may or may not come into play later. Also, typically they make good entertainers, which I'm sure you know, and at least in the Outer Rim, you find Twi'leks and Twi'leks in all manner of different, jobs, employments, whatever. But you do also find them frequently as slaves within the hot criminal syndicates. But Josh, I don't presume that do you have a way to write something down, whether it's like a note app or just a pen and paper, or no?
Yeah, I have a MacBook, so I can just open up notes.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. All right, what am I typing out?
So I figure we'll just go over the abilities, some of the details of the character. So their starting abilities, they have 1 in brawn, 2 in agility, 2 in intellect, 2 in cunning, 2 in willpower, and 3 in presence.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of your wound threshold, and so basically in this game you have wounds as opposed to like hit points. It's interesting. In D&D, hit points kind of make up both like sort of superficial damage, and then in a lot of the time people look at them as actual damage as well. Where in this game you basically have soak, which is the whether that's represented by armor or your natural toughness. That's how much damage you can absorb before you take any wounds. But wounds are wounds. They're nasty. So your wound threshold would be 10 plus your brawn,
which currently would be a +1, which would put it at 11.
Yep. So if you did not increase any characteristics, it would be an 11 for your wounds. Strain threshold, and strain it sort of represents like the mental and the physical wear and tear on your body, not so much damage per se, but whether that is, you being extremely worried or nervous about something, whether you've been, traveling for hours in the hot desert sun and it's just, taking a toll on your body, whatever, that represents strain. It's kind of like a hit point system in a way, but it's nuanced and it's a little bit different. And so just so you guys know, in terms of gameplay, you can have things do strain damage, or I can say, you're going to take 2 strain because of this. It's also a sort of a resource that you can use, because in the game, one of the things that you can do, if you wanted to take an extra maneuver when you're in combat, you could spend 2 strain to do that. So just for kind of anybody out there who is sort of wondering what that is, it's all explained in the book, but that's sort of a very broad overview of it. But yeah, so your strain threshold is 11 plus your willpower,
which would put, seeing as it's Twi'lek's willpower is 2 at 13.
Yep.
Okay.
Your starting experience, you get 100 XP, and I'll go over XP costs in a little bit. If we have time in this session, we will. Otherwise, I could do it. But it's definitely in the book under the skills section, and I think in the later part of chapter 2 in the character creation section. But that's what you will use to effectively build up your characteristics, your skills, whatever. And then you have a special ability. So you would begin the game with 1 rank in either charm or deception. And what that means is that in this game you have skills, and each skill has a rank of 1 to 5. So this one you get 1 free rank. So you start with a rank in either charm or deception. And when making a skill check, you can remove a setback dice imposed due to arid or hot environmental conditions. So what that means is that if you're in a situation, because your race is naturally accustomed to hot, arid climates, the home planet Ryloth is like that. If you're out in the desert and I'm like, okay, you want to do this, but because it's super hot and you're running low on water, I'm going to impose a setback. You have this ability to remove a setback for that specific condition.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So that's the big thing for you, for Twi'leks. You can reference the the write up on page 51 and 52 if you want to, when you have time. But I thought we would start with that, and then we can go on to careers in a moment. But I want to talk to Jeff and see what you're feeling in terms of a species, whether that is droid or something else.
I'm cool with locking in droid.
Nice. All right. So droids are fun because droids basically start with 1 in all of their attributes. And then you have a whole lot more experience. You have 175 experience points. And there's a lot sort of to being a droid, but basically, it sounds like you're kind of like an assassin droid, right? I mean, would you say that you were built for that, or would you have been more like maybe a protocol droid that happens to be an assassin?
No, I think that like the previous hut that he was serving that betrayed him, like he was built for that hut to be a tool,
Right.
And that's from day one that he was flipped on, so to speak. That's been all that he's known.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Yeah, so you would basically be a class 4 like combat assassination droid. Cool. Yep. So you would start with 1s and everything. Your wound threshold would be 10 plus your brawn. And same with your strain threshold, 10 plus willpower. But you get that 175 starting XP, which you need because everything starts at 1. Special abilities for you. I mean, obviously you don't need to eat or sleep or breathe. You're unaffected by toxins, poisons, whatever. You have, so this, we probably won't get into this, but you have a cybernetic implant cap of 6. Most characters can only have cybernetics up to their brawn rating. But if you were to take cybernetics, you could take up to 6 of them. Also, in addition, after selecting your career, the droid player character may train 1 rank in 6 of his 8 career skills instead of the usual 4. So what that means is that obviously because you are a programmed being, you're trained in a lot more skills. Now, this is on page 47 of the Edge of the Empire core rulebook, so you can obviously refer to that when you need to as well. But yeah, so you get to train in 6 as opposed to 4 of your main career skills. And after selecting your first specialization, you can train 1 rank in 3 out of the 4 specialization skills that you get instead of 2. So that means that droids tend to start with a couple more ranks in skills, but they kind of need it because their attributes are so low. You can't become force sensitive. Sorry. And the other thing with droids to remember is that something like a stim pack isn't going to work on you, right? Because you don't have organic parts. So if you were to get damaged, it's going to require mechanics checks as opposed to medicine, or like a mechanic, a little, I forget what they call it, but there's like a little kit that essentially would work, like an emergency repair kit, I think is what it's called, that can help heal you up. So I think that I mean, that is the sort of nuts and bolts when it comes to the droid. And then I think what we'll do for now, we'll skip over the humans since Chris, your character is already generated, but effectively humans get 2s and everything to start. And then they get, I think, where is their special? They get 110 XP, which is nice to start. And they also get they can choose 1 rank in 2 different non-career skills, which is, so it kind of represents that the fact that humans are versatile, right? Now that's already been done on your pre-gen, but yeah. So I think what we'll do then is we'll quickly jump over to the bounty hunter career, because what'll happen, the way that character creation works in this system is it's a lot in a way it's a lot like D&D in the sense that you're going through and you're plugging in the various pieces to your character as you go along. So for the bounty hunter, so this will apply both to Josh and Jeff, you have 8 career skills. So these are skills that you as a bounty hunter would be naturally able to train in. And that's important because what that means is a career skill, when you're spending XP later to increase it, is cheaper than a non-career skill. But yours are athletics, brawl, perception, and these are on page 56 of the core rulebook. But so athletics, brawl, perception, both forms of piloting. So piloting planetary and piloting space. You also have a career skill in ranged heavy. So likely you guys are shooting big guns as opposed to little ones. Not always, but you're good at it. Streetwise and vigilance. And I'll take a minute here just to talk about the vigilance and cool skills, because those are 2 skills that you have on your character sheet that represent a number of things, but they're most commonly used in initiative. So in this system, initiative is not based on how fast you are. Initiative is based on either how well you are able to keep your cool, keep a cool head, and plan out your objective, or how quickly you are able to react to a situation that is now tense, and whatever. So vigilance is the skill that you would use in a situation where you get into combat maybe unexpectedly, right? You run around the corner and there's the stormtroopers, right? And and you're running back down the hallway, firing at them, yelling, like Han Solo does in the first movie, that kind of thing. That would be vigilance. Versus like if you're kind of this cold calculating, like you're planning something, there's stormtroopers beyond that door, or there's, rivals beyond that door, and you're going to go and set up an ambush. That's when you would roll your cool to determine, okay, do I go first? So that may be something to consider taking a rank in, but it's up to you. And so you automatically gain one rank in 4 of those skills. But Jeff, you gain it in 6 without having to spend any experience points. All right. And then Jeff, you picked assassin, right, as your specialization?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, or at least for your concept. So the assassin specialization is a specialized part of the bounty hunter career, and you have specialization skills as well. So you gain melee, ranged heavy, skullduggery, and stealth. And you in particular can gain a rank in 3 of those as opposed to 2. Now, what's cool about that is you have ranged heavy on both, which means if you choose that twice, you would gain 2 free ranks in that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Now, typically, you don't have the ability to train a skill beyond 2 ranks at starting level. So just keep that in mind. But what that means is if you really want to be like, I'm going to be that shooty guy, you're going to be damn good at it right away.
Yeah, and I don't have to use any of my other experience for that.
Exactly.
I can pump it
Yep.
into the attributes I'll need or things like that.
Right, exactly. So as you can see, you have quite a diverse range of skills here with ranks in them. Josh, you have the same list of skills. The only difference is that you get to pick 4. You get to have a rank in 4 of that initial 8 skills. And then on the other one, you get to put a rank into 2 of those additional 4 skills for your specialization.
Okay.
Yeah. And these, again, are on page 56 and 57 of the core book. If you go under the Bounty Hunter career, you'll find those. So when you have the opportunity, you can look that over. And I can answer questions about them now, too, if you want. But I wanted to point that part out real quick for you.
So I'm looking at the actual character sheet. You said I get to choose 4 out of.
Yeah. So for the bounty hunter, when you're looking at the sheet, I don't know if you have a spot on there to mark off whether it's a career skill or not, but maybe just put a mark next to them. But if you put a mark next to athletics, brawl, perception, piloting planetary, and piloting space, ranged heavy, streetwise, and vigilance. Those are your initial 8 career skills. So you can choose 4 of those and put a rank into 4 of those. You get a free rank, basically.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
And then same with the specialization skills, where you get 2 of those out of the 4. All right, let's take a look at the Explorer, and we'll go through this, Chris, just so you kind of have an idea here, because you can probably see it. But the Explorer is definitely more knowledge-based and survival piloting based, right? So they're the ones that are kind of bopping around the galaxy, or maybe not, maybe on a planet, but you basically would have 8 career skills, including astrogation, which is important if you are spacefaring. Cool. And you may have been gone when I was telling Jeff about the difference between the cool and the vigilance skill.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah, so I'll repeat it here. In this system, initiative is not dexterity based like it is in D&D. It's based on how good you are at either keeping your cool and keeping to a plan that you have set up for combat,
Okay.
or how quickly you're able and how good you are at reacting to an unknown situation, right? So all of a sudden combat is happening. It's about you sort of having that, being vigilant and being able to be like, all right, I got this, right? As opposed to how fast you are. And so what would happen is typically when it comes to an initiative, what I would do is if the fiction sort of has set it up so that you have no idea what's happening, all of a sudden combat just happens, I'm going to say, make a vigilance roll for me. But on occasion, if you've described your action in a way where it could be either, what I would likely do is say, go ahead and roll either cool or vigilance for me.
Oh, okay.
Because I like to give a choice when there's a possibility of both so that you can pick the best one.
Okay.
But for you, the Explorer is much more able to keep their cool, right? And sometimes that happens when that might be necessary when you're, kind of negotiating with a tough person, not the actual negotiation, but keeping your cool. If you're gambling and you want to not give away your poker face, that's one as well.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where the bounty hunters are better at vigilance. They're better at that sort of quick reactions and being able to stand fast when things are, bad stuff's going down. So astrogation, cool. And then you have a bunch of knowledge skills. So knowledge lore, right? Lore is just sort of that secret lore of the galaxy, or that, that sort of like the knowledge of the Jedi might be lore in this setting. It could theoretically be knowledge history, but because in the setting, the history of the Jedi has largely been wiped out, you would use lore in that case.
Okay.
You also have knowledge of the Outer Rim planets. So being an explorer, you might know, Tatooine is ruled by effectively Jabba the Hutt. That's a place where the most wretched hive of scum and villainy exists. And, that might be a good spot to find a hotshot pilot that could make the Kessel Run in, in under 12 parsecs or something, right? Like, that's the kind of thing that Outer Rim knowledge might help you with. You also have knowledge xenology, which is like the knowledge of animals and alien species and stuff. So that would be one if you were trying to, you were out somewhere and you were trying to identify tracks, or you were like, hey, what's the weak spot on this Rancor? That would be, that.
Cool.
And then perception, piloting space, and survival. And survival is kind of the same as it is in D&D.
Okay.
And then you were a scout. So where's the scout? And so then in addition to that, you would also get athletics again. Athletics for the first time, medicine, that piloting planetary, and survival again. So sometimes, depending on, especially if you're a scout and you tend to be a more land-based scout, a lot of those times characters will put 2 free ranks in survival. Because if you're checking through some hot jungle or some desert or whatever, that skill can become really useful.
Great. Yeah. That makes sense.
And so the point is, because you don't necessarily get to go through the traditional character creation, I wanted to point these out for you anyway, because if you do end up doing that, as I was explaining before, when you're going through your career and your specialization and you're looking at skills, you get a number of free ranks to start with, which means that when you're rolling your dice pool, you're going to be able to add yellow dice into the positive part of your pool for each rank that you might have in that skill. Yeah.
Okay. I wondered where all those yellows came from.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And so the basic way that the dice pool works is that you basically are assembling both positive and negative dice. Your positive dice come from your characteristics, right? So your agility, your brawn, whatever. And also your ranks in your skills. And that makes up the positive part, right? So if you're making a piloting check, the positive part is a combination of your agility and how many ranks you have in piloting. And the way it works is whichever one of those is higher makes up the total number of positive dice you get. So let's just say you had a 4 in agility, right?
Okay.
That means that you're going to have 4 positive dice. So all things being equal, you'd have 4 green dice, because those are the ones that represent your characteristics. But you have 2 ranks in your piloting skill. So what that means is you basically upgrade 2 of those green dice to yellow dice. So now you have 2 green and 2 yellow for your positive dice. And those yellow dice are really great because those have more successes on them, but they also have that triumph symbol.
Okay.
And that one is the one that allows you to do really cool things, or activate a critical hit if you wanted to, if you're in combat. But And don't worry about that right now. I'll explain that again as we're in the game. But just for the sake of you guys and for anybody who might watch this, that's the basic part of the positive dice. And then negative dice work the same way, but I deal with those. So there's your base, risk of failure. So your difficulty, I might say, okay, 2 purple, right? That means that to your dice pool, you're adding just 2 purple dice. And they're basically the opposite of the green dice. And then a red dice would be the opposite of the yellow dice. And that one has the despair symbol on it. So you don't want despair, although that can add really fun complications as well.
Cool.
But yeah, and so you kind of, I know you've looked through a little bit anyway, some of the White Wolf systems. Those also have a dice pool. They just use one type of dice. So let me tell you guys how experience points work, because that's basically how you would need to sort of ultimately upgrade your character, because you've done pretty much everything else, except for some of the basic things like your wounds and whatever. But we'll do that later. So anybody who wants to know, okay, now I have my species, I have my career, I have my specialization, I've got my characteristics. Now I want to start picking skills, maybe upgrading my characteristics, whatever. That shows you how to do that on page 92. And so you're basically spending from your starting pool of experience, right? So Jeff, you've got the 175, and I think it was 110 for Josh's character. And effectively, each one of these things has a cost to them. So now, I always recommend in character creation, if you want to be really good at, let's say, agility-based tasks, the recommendation is that you upgrade your characteristic instead of your skills, because you can always train your skills throughout play, but you can't increase your characteristics except for talents, which you can get, which are way down in your talent tree and will cost a lot of experience points. So basically, it's not like D&D where every 4 levels you have an opportunity to increase your stats. This is your opportunity. And the way it works is during character creation, raising a characteristic to the next highest rank or rating costs 10 times the value that it's being raised to. So what that means is if you have so it says here, for example, raising a character's brawn from 3 to 4 would require 40 experience points, right? So Jeff, if you're raising something from a 1 to a 2, it costs 20 experience points. And then if you raise it from 2 to 3, it costs another 30 experience points, and so on. Yeah, and obviously, each improvement must be purchased separately, meaning that if you increase your character's brawn from 3 to 5, it costs you 90 experience points because it's 40 for the first one and then 50 for the second one. So you can't go above 5 in an attribute or in a characteristic unless you are a species that allows you to do that. And I don't think there are any in the book here. So that's characteristics. That's the cost for characteristics. And then you have skill training. So each skill has 5 ranks of training available. You can only train up to 2 ranks at starting character creation. But you can buy non-career skills as well, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the cost for training skills is either in non-career or career skills. So training a career skill to the next highest rank costs 5 times the rank that it is being raised to. So for example, if you have no ranks, right, you're at 0 and you're training it up to 1, that's going to cost you 5 points. Okay. If you're at 1 and you're increasing it to 2, that's going to cost you 10 points. And so on, right? So if you're at 2, you're going to 3, it costs you 15, so on and so forth. So non-career skills, each rank of a non-career skill costs an additional 5 points, okay? So if you are looking down and you're like, oh man, I really want discipline, as you know, I want to have some ranks in that because I anticipate needing that for whatever reason, but it's not a career skill. You still have to do 5 times the level that you're going to. So if you're going to go from 0 to 1, it's 5, but then you have to add 5 to it. So you can see this is my least favorite part of this system because much like Cypher system, character creation can be a little bit complicated. That being said, this gets super, super easy once you've done it for a while. And get Ogdude's character generator. It is great. It is a program, so you have to download it. It's not an app-based thing, and it's not web-based, but it's well worth it because it makes character creation very fast. And I know you can find all the files just online. Fantasy Flight Games has even sort of tacitly said this is cool. And the Tides of Change role-playing club group on Facebook also has links to it and the data sets in their things as well. But check that out. And then you get talents. So talents are essentially the last major part of character creation. And talents are a lot like feats in D&D or special abilities. They allow you to do special things. And talents are simple because they just have a base cost, right? So it's none of this, 5 times this or 10 times that. Like they just have an experience point cost. And they're in a tree in the book, which means that you can't get to certain talents before you've gotten to ones before them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull, I'll get the Bounty Hunter here. All right, so what we'll do is the Bounty Hunter Assassin's talent tree is on page 59. But these are also, you can find many of these talent trees. These are, Fantasy Flight Games has given permission to photocopy these. So this is something that can be shared without worry about copyright information. I'm just going to hold up the book because that's how I want to do it. But so you can see, right, how it's set up in this tree structure. And each one of these talents in the box has a little checkbox next to it and says how much it costs. So the first row, they each cost 5 experience points, right? And so you have things like grit, lethal blows, stalker, and dodge. So I'll just read grit. Grit is just gain +1 to your strain threshold. So that can be really useful, especially if you're in situations where, as a bounty hunter, you might want to be taking extra maneuvers, to be able to get undercover or get into an advantageous position or whatever. You anticipate you spending strain to do that. That can be really useful. Stalker, add a boost dice per rank of Stalker. So that means that you can potentially take Stalker more than once, but add a boost dice per rank of Stalker to all stealth and coordination checks. So something like that's great because what that's basically doing is it's saying, you have this talent where you're really good at stalking. So anytime you are rolling a stealth check, you get to add a positive dice to it. And it's a boost dice, which is the little blue D6. So that can, those can come in handy, right? Those can be the difference between failure and success. So, and what this says is because it's per rank, depending on how you go through the tree, I think there's 3 ranks of Stalker in here. So theoretically, you could get up to 3 boost dice if you had all 3 of those. And then it goes down to the next, set of talents, which each cost 10 XP. So with those, there's no like limit in terms of what you can take. It's just how much XP do you want to spend on them. So my recommendation is talents are great, but starting out, my recommendation is to focus on getting the characteristics to where you want them. Typically 1, maybe 2. You don't need all of your characteristics to be high because, if you are a bounty hunter, you may not need a high presence, for example. It just depends on what your concept is. But you probably want a high agility, right? If you're going to shoot, or a high melee if you're going to use swords and knives, or a high brawl if you're going to be a punchy guy. And those characteristics cost, as you can see, the most experience. That's expensive. And then I would also recommend considering whatever your maybe top skills you think you're going to use. If you haven't already gotten up to your 2 ranks in it, maybe put a point or 2 in there, especially if you want to be like somebody who's super stealth focused. It can't hurt to put a rank or 2 in that stealth skill if you have the XP for it, because it's much nicer when you're rolling a big old dice pool and you get to add a couple of yellows to it. But I know sometimes one of the mistakes I've seen people make is that they focus on skills instead of the attributes. It's better to have 4 dice and 1 of them green than have 2 dice and they're both yellow. You know what I mean? Like, get that agility up to a 3 or a 4 if you want to be really good at it. And then work on your skills. So that's the basics. Now, the talents are listed in the character creation chapter, but they're a basic description. So what I would recommend that you do is when you take your talents, go to, I think it's chapter 4. Yeah, chapter 4 in the book lists the talents. And I would actually, you're probably only going to take 1 or 2 talents anyway. At starting, I would actually read the full description of those talents, because what's interesting is this actually sometimes gives you really crucial information about how it's supposed to be used. Because you might think just from the basic description in the tree, oh, okay, I can use it here, or it can do this. But then when you go and you read through the full description, it might be the same wording, but it might have more nuance to it. So chapter 5, talents. And then the last thing I want to do is talk about whether or not you want to add obligation, because you have the ability to take on additional obligation for either extra experience points or more money. And money might be important because you might want to buy more gear. Or it might not. I think each character starts with 500 credits, which does not go a long way. So let me pull that section up here. What you can essentially do is, let me see. Oh, I didn't highlight it here. You can take on extra obligation, but think about that before you do that, because obligation isn't just a currency. It is a major complication in your characters' lives. And what happens is the way that it's represented mechanically is at the beginning of the session, we'll roll a D100. And if your obligation triggers, meaning we've built a list of 1 through whatever, what that means is that you start the game with your strain threshold reduced by 2. So you have, a disadvantage there because you are really concerned about whatever your obligation is. And the rest of your party has their strain threshold reduced by 1. So good times. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to let you guys kind of, any questions that you might have, we'll answer those. But let me pull it up here. So, okay, so you can take a total of +10 obligation if you want. And if you take, where is it? Here we go. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm blanking on it. All right. I might have to come back to it. Basically, you have the ability to either get an additional 2,500 credits if you take on an additional 10 XP, or you can get an additional 10 experience points if you take on an additional 10 obligation. You can also split it. So if you wanted to say, all right, I'm going to take an additional 5 obligation, and that will get me 1,000 credits, or 5 obligation for an additional 5 XP, or you can combine them, right? You don't have to do that, but consider that, because 10 obligation for 2,500 credits is nice, but think about that, right? So if you do that, what does that mean? Well, that means that you've gone to somebody for money and said, loan me some money, right? So that might be considered, you might want to put that as a debt obligation. You don't have to, but that makes a lot of sense, right? So whatever your obligation is, in addition to that, maybe you have this 10 obligation of debt to whatever hut or Black Sun or just, shady dude, shady weapons dealer, right, that you bought your equipment from. So basically your next steps at this point would be to buy equipment. I'm not going to necessarily go over that right now, because that's standard. That's in every single role-playing game ever. But your equipment is in the book. You can find that. I think it's chapter 6. Let me see, right, where is it? Starting on, these chapters are so long, but they have so much good stuff in them. Page 147, chapter 5, gear and equipment. You can go through the list and see what they've got. One real quick thing I'll say about that is that one of the layers of this system is that weapons have weapon qualities. And so you may want to look at those when you're going through the book. Those are in the front of the gear section. But let's say, for example, that one of the weapon qualities is disorient, right? You might see that listed in the description of the weapon that you buy. And it says, this one happens to be on page 156. It says a weapon with the disorient quality can daze an opponent. When disorient is triggered, and typically to activate a weapon quality, you usually have to spend 2 advantages. That doesn't have to make sense to you now, but it will later. When it's triggered, the target is disoriented, and that's a thing that you can reference in the book, for a number of rounds equal to the weapon's disorientation or disorient rating. Meaning, like, if it has disorient 3 and you activate it, that the opponent is disoriented for 3 rounds. And a disoriented target adds 1 setback to all skill checks he performs, right? So think about that, right? Like, if you're like, okay, I want to buy a blaster, but if you find a weapon in there that has a specific weapon quality and you're like, ooh, that might be kind of cool for the way my character works, especially if you want to stun versus kill kind of thing, keep that in mind. But I think that that's the gist of character creation. There's a little bit more to it, and we're not necessarily going to pick a starship today because depending on how the adventure goes, we may not need one. But I wanted to open it up to you guys if you have any questions that you wanted to go over now.
So I'm just wondering on Sasha, because you were just talking about talents.
Mm-hmm.
So her initial pages don't have any talents,
Mm-hmm.
but she has talents once you're
Later
over. So
yeah, I'll tell you what. Go ahead and use the talent sheet that's later in the thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good. I'm glad you brought that up. Those characters were built for the beginner game, and in the beginner game they don't start with talents, which is unfortunate. I don't think.
No.
But for the sake of this one shot, well, why not? Yeah, because it's more fun to have talents.
Cool. She's got some good ones. They're cool.
Yeah, I would say maybe you can check, like you can have 10 XP worth. I don't know if it just lists it on there as you have them or it says you get to pick them, but you can have like 10 XP worth of talents.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is usually like 2 like top tier ones.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like, I mean, I don't know. So she's got grit.
Yep.
And rapid recovery.
Yep.
But then she's got some bumps to her skills, medicine and vigilance.
Yeah, so the later half of that playbook or character book is after you have gained experience points. That would represent you spending experience points on those skills. So you want to use the first part of the sheet for that.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so it's gonna be, I get it. All right.
So what I would say with talents, if you take talents, maybe keep those talents written somewhere next to you while you're playing so that you can refer to them, because it's easy to forget them.
Yeah.
But it can be really nice when you're like, oh, I got this talent that lets me take away that setback dice that you just gave me. So, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So what else? Are you guys heads exploding?
Yeah, my brain is like completely overwhelmed with a lot of stuff, and I'm looking through the book at like a whole bunch of the different like weapons and stuff like that. And you said we start off with what, 500 credits to spend on equipment? Yeah,
that's the base. Now, and like I said, you can increase that with obligation. So if you are thinking about your characters and you want more money, that's one way to do it. Just let me know if you're like, wait, what do I need to do again? And I can let you know how that works. But yeah, you would effectively start with 500 credits.
Yeah. Okay. Do we buy armor or is it just weapons?
Well, yeah. So equipment in general. So that's going to be anything from your comm link to, your armor to your blaster, right? Starting characters, especially in Edge of the Empire, they don't have a lot. Like you're kind of relying on your just natural skills and talents. I mean, like a blaster rifle is pretty expensive, right? So, you bounty hunters that are naturally trained, like you might take a blaster rifle and, some padded clothing and a comm link or something, like, that might be all you have with 500 starting credits. But this is not a game of going into the dungeon's lair, the dragon's lair and looting, chests full of gold. Like, this is trying to smuggle that spice over to that world and hope you don't get caught by the Imperials. And if you do and you drop the shipment, Jabba gets mad at you, kind of thing. But it's not all desperation. I mean, there's, obviously lots of fun times to be had.
So then if you take an additional obligation, you get an additional 10 XP to spend, correct?
Yep. If you take an additional 10 obligation, you can have 10 XP, or if you take 10 obligation, you can have an additional 2,500 credits.
Oh man.
Yep. So that can be nice. That's you do that if you want more gear, more gear, right? But Jeff, how about you? Do you have any questions?
I think I'm good for now. It's like I think I just kind of need to let everything
Mm-hmm.
settle a little bit, and once I kind of sit down to like start working out the details, I may have some questions about specifics.
Yeah.
But I think as far as just like a general process to get me started, I think I kind of have enough to work on, but not so much specific that I can like bring up what those questions would be yet without kind of giving it some time.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah. And, I was contemplating whether or not I wanted to record this because this is confusing. I'm sure it's confusing for you guys, and it's probably confusing for anybody watching it who hasn't ever played the game before. What will happen, and I guarantee this will happen, when we play the session, after you've made a few of those rolls, it's gonna click. Now, you might not fully understand it and be like, okay, I can run this game, but you're gonna be like, oh, all right, all I'm doing is rolling a skill check. Like, I get it. It is way easier to play than you would think based on character creation. And it's way easier to run too than you would think. But yeah, so I mean, it's just a lot of pieces, right? Because Star Wars has, really any sci-fi setting, it just has stuff, right? There's stuff out there. And this system chose to have a lot of nuance to it. But what it does really well is it all just works and flows together very well. So we'll see. I'll give you kind of an example. It's like, let's say we're gearing up for combat, and I say, okay, make your initiative rolls. Although I'm not going to do that. I'll actually have you guys pre-roll initiative at the beginning because I hate slowing down the game for initiative. And then we'll assemble the initiative order. And the way it works in the system is it's not like, okay, Jeff goes then, Chris goes then. It's PC, NPC, whatever. Like whichever PC wants to go first, if you're in that slot, you guys decide. So you go, right? And let's say a PC gets to go first. And so, all right, you're squaring off against a group of pirates that are trying to steal the goods that you're trying to get to whatever your destination is, thugs, pirates, whatever. And I'm like, what do you do? Right. And then Jeff's like, oh, I got this. And, he pulls out his big heavy blaster and he's like, okay, I'm going to use auto fire on these guys. And I'm just going to blast the hell out of them. Right. And you sort of describe what it is that you want to do. And then I'll be like, okay, great. Well, you're going to roll ranged heavy. So you'll look down on your sheet and you'll see, or if we're playing in roll 20, you'll just click the button. But you would assemble your dice pool based on your attribute and your skill. And then I might say, okay, great. And because you go charging in at them and, you're this like kind of big droid, kind of looking a little bit scary or whatever. And they maybe weren't expecting opposition. I'll give you a boost dice, right? So that'll give you an additional thing, but you're firing at them. They are medium range. So that means you have a difficulty of 2 purple dice. And they're behind cover, so you get a setback dice, right? So this all sounds very complicated. It's not. You roll this whole set of dice, and you end up with 2 successes and 3 advantages. So you've succeeded. And then the mechanics come in, right? So what happens is it's like, okay, great, I succeeded. So your weapon as a heavy blaster deals like 10 damage base or something. And then you add an additional point of damage for each success. So you've had 2 successes, so you deal 12 damage. And you got 3 advantages hanging out there. So what I might say to you is, all right, well, what can you think of that you could use to put yourself into an advantageous position, right? And you might say, oh, I overrun their position. Or, and this is where the crunch comes in, right? Your auto fire. Well, maybe it takes 2 advantage to activate your auto fire. But now you can hit another target with it or something. So it's neat. So you can play very crunchy and very mechanical, or you can say, oh great, I have an advantage here. So I'm going to think narratively, and I'm going to say, okay, this is what I want to do with that advantage. Maybe I'm blasting away at them, and because my gun is so big, it blasts right through their cover, as well as taking out one of the guys because you succeeded. The other 3 guys now are sitting there, and they no longer have cover. And then PC number 2 gets to go because they rolled really well. So, it's just a basic example there. But the thing to keep in mind, like I always advise my players, and I advise with any system, as a player, all you need to do is just describe to the GM what it is that you want to do. Not, can I roll a stealth check, but I want to try to sneak past these guards and get, kind of duck behind that, pile of crates, so that if I need to shoot at them, I have an advantage here, right? That's how you would do it. And then I would say, okay, great, this is what you're going to roll. And then we assemble the dice pool. So it's all skill checks. It's, easy peasy. But cool. Well, did you guys have any last minute questions, thoughts, anything that you wanted to say? No?
Not really. This is just something that I'm going to have to rewatch the video later and just let it all set in and try to make sure everything is. And at that point, if anything, I can always just message you or put it in the group chat for anything.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. If this is helpful, go back and watch it. At least I reference pages in the book, so you can certainly take a look at that if you need to. But yeah, any questions that you have, this is the most complicated part of this game. Once you get through character creation, it's a breeze. Cool. Well, thank you guys for jumping on and doing this with me, and thanks for allowing me to record this. Hopefully somebody sees this and finds it helpful and plays Edge of the Empire because of that. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and end the broadcast. If anybody does watch this and you have any questions about character creation, don't hesitate to shoot me a line, put a link in or a comment, in the YouTube video or whatever. And one thing, we didn't do any Force users in this. You can play a Force user in Edge of the Empire, and it's crazy fun. Costs a lot more experience though. But anyway, hope this is fun, and I can't wait to see next week what these guys come up with. That's it. Signing off.